Hey guys, today we are going to be talking about multiplying decimals or finding multiplication patterns with decimals. We're going to be starting chapter 4, and chapter 4 is going to be all about multiplying decimals. So, if you'll look here, these are a couple things. This is one thing we need to review before we can get started with finding those multiplication patterns with decimals. These are all powers of 10, okay? So when I say the name of each of these, you'll kind of understand why we call it the power of 10. So this is 10 to the 0 power, 10 to the first power, 10 to the second power, or 10 squared, 10 cubed, and 10 cubed, or 10 to the third power. So we just have to remember real quick what each of these is worth. What's the value of each of these numbers? 10 to the 0 power is going to be worth 1. Basically, any number with a 0 as its exponent is going to be worth 1. So I could have 25 to the 0 power, and it would be 1. If I have 10 to the first power, that is going to be worth 10, because basically it's just saying you're just multiplying. The exponent is telling me how many times 10 is multiplied by itself. Well, there's only one 10 there, so we're not multiplying it by itself at all. So it's just going to equal 10. 10 squared, that's 10 times 10, so that's going to be equal to 100. And remember, when we're doing exponents with tens, it's kind of easy because, well, how many zeros are there going to be? 2 zeros. Well, how many zeros are going to there be with 10 cubed? 3, because it says 3 in the exponent. So that's 10 cubed is 1,000. Okay, so we can't forget those. And also, another thing that you're going to see is decimals. Okay, so we'll have powers of 10, but we'll also have decimals. So 0.1 is going to be worth 1/10. 0.01 is 1/100th. And 0.001 is worth 1/1000th. Okay, now this is something that's really going to help you when we get started with fractions coming up soon, and that is that when you say this, okay, when you say this number 1/10, that's actually going to show you exactly how you would write it as a decimal. Let me change the color here so you can see. So 1/10, how would you write that? You would write it 1/10. And it still equals the same thing, but we're writing it as a fraction instead of a decimal. 1/100th would be 1/100. Still the exact same value, but we're just writing it as a fraction instead of a decimal. And 1/1000th would be written as 1/1000. Again, it's the same value, but we're just writing it as a fraction. And you can kind of hear it when you say 1/10, well, 1/10, 1/100th, 1/100th, and so on and so forth. So that kind of makes things a little bit easier. So let's go on to patterns now. So we have our, right here we have our powers of 10, right here we have our decimals, and right here we have our fractions. So let's start off with our powers of 10 really quick. 10 to the 0 power, if you guys remember what we just said, 10 to the 0 power equals 1. It does not equal 10. It's going to be equal to 1. So anytime we multiply something times 1, it is that number. So we're going to start off here with 1/2800, because 1/2800 times 1 is 1/2800. Okay, but now we're going to start seeing a pattern coming out. Okay, so when I have 10 to the first power times 1/2800, that's basically saying, okay, I'm going to multiply 10 times 1/2800. If I'm going to put this in my handy dandy little place value chart up here, I'm going to put 1/2800 up here. 1 is going to go in the ones place, the 2 is going to go in the tenths place, and the 8 is going to go in the hundredths place. So I have 1/2800. Now, if I'm going to multiply it by 10, what does that mean I'm going to be doing? Well, if you multiply something by 10, think about it, that number gets bigger, doesn't it? Yes, it does. So When a number gets bigger by a power of 10, that means it's going to be increasing. It's going to be moving basically 1 over on the place value chart. So we moved this over 1 place value. Now, the answer, so when I multiply 10 times 1 and 28/100, it's going to equal 12 and 8/10. So I'm going to write that down here. Now, do you see my pattern right here? I had 1 and 28/100. Basically, what I did, though, is when I multiply by 10, I can take my decimal, and I'm going to move it over 1 to the right. Now, remember, the number's getting bigger. So it's not just the decimals moving, it's just that the number's getting bigger. But a trick is that we can just think of moving it over once to the right. 1, 0, move it over once to the right. All right, now we have to think about 10 squared. 10 squared, remember, is worth 100. So 10 squared, or 100 times 1 and 28/100. Well, remember what I just said right here. See the exponent 2 right there? Or think of the fact that there's 2 zeros in 100. I'm going to take my decimal, I'm going to move it over to the right 2 times. And that's going to make the number 128. And don't forget, that basically means that I'm moving this over 1 more time on my place value chart to make it 128. Okay, so that's pretty simple. The one other thing that you have to remember is, okay, so 10 cubed, think about it, 10 cubed is 1,000 times 1 and 28/10, hundredths, sorry, is going to be moving the decimal over 3 times. But, we don't have a number here. Okay, so is it just 128? Well, no, because that was the answer to this one, and we can't have the same answer. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my little placeholder 0 there. And my answer is going to end up being 1,280 because I multiplied it times 1,000. All right. Now, it's pretty easy. You see the pattern going on there. We kept moving our decimal over to the right, right? Well, now, if we look at decimals, when we're multiplying by decimals, do you think the number's going to get bigger or smaller? Well, actually, the number gets smaller, so it's going to be the opposite. We're not going to be moving the decimal over to the right anymore. We're going to actually be moving it over to the left. So let me erase this so we can still use our place value chart. And if you need one in class, and if that helps you, then just be sure to ask me, and I'll give you guys a place value chart to work with. 32 times 1, we're not going to worry about that because you should know that that is 32. How about 32 times 1/10, though? Okay, this is what I want you to think about. 32 times 1/10. Okay, I'm going to write it a little bit differently. Instead of 0.1, I'm going to write it as 1 over 10. I'm going to write it as its fraction form, okay? When we're multiplying fractions, all right, basically you're multiplying the numerator times the numerator and the denominator times the denominator, okay? So the numerator is the top number here. Well, we don't really have a denominator, so we're just counting this as our numerator right here, 32. 32 times 1 is 32. And then we're going to put 10 as the denominator, or the number on the bottom. And I have 32/10, okay? Now, I know this can be kind of just a slight bit confusing, but I really want you to just think about this for a second, okay? If I have 32/10, think about if I have 32 longs and base 10 blocks, okay? Is that really how many I have, or would I need to regroup those 32/10 and make them into 3 ones and 2/10? It's still 32/10. I still have 32/10, but I would make 3 of those groups of 10 into a whole, and then that would become 3 wholes and 2/10. All right, so we'll look at that with actual base 10 blocks tomorrow. But I just wanted you to be able to see that's kind of how it works. So whenever I do it, but another way to think of it, though, is think of how when I multiplied 32 times 1/10, I'm moving my place my decimal over to the left once. Okay, I'm moving over to the left once, and I'm moving it in my place value chart over to the right once because it's going to become smaller. So again, 32 times 1/100th. Okay, so I'm going to use the same example right here. 32 times 1/100th would equal 32 hundredths. And that's going to move even one more. Think about how you would write 32 hundredths. I write it just like this, 32 hundredths. Okay? So that's pretty simple. So this is going to equal 0.32. This is going to equal, and remember I moved my place value, or my decimal point over twice. This is equal to 3 and 2/10. Forgot to write that one down. And last but not least, let's look at this one. I have 32 times 1/1000th. So I'm going to be moving that over 3 times, and it's going to be 32 thousandths. So I'm actually going to take my decimal from 1, 2, 3. It goes right here. Well, I don't have a number here. Well, remember, I'm going to put that 0 as my placeholder, so it's going to become 0.032 or 32 thousandths. Okay, so since we looked at the decimal or the fractions already, I'm going to go ahead and skip this part right here so that we can look at our word problem really quickly. And then I'll give you guys some practice problems to do before you get to class. All right, let's look at our word problem here. Cindy's making a quilt, basically. Okay, so she's combining equal size rectangles from different fabric patterns to make a postage stamp quilt. Now that's not very important information, so let's just skip past that now. Each rectangle has an area of 75 hundredths of a square inch. If she uses 1,000 rectangles to make the quilt, what will be the area of the quilt? Well, I know my two numbers here are 75 hundredths and 1,000. Okay, if she's using 1,000 rectangles and each of them is worth 75 hundredths, I would need to multiply 1,000 times 75 hundredths. Okay, well, that kind of seems a little daunting at first, doesn't it? It's kind of overwhelming. Well, what you're going to want to do is let's think about the patterns that we learned. Okay, so let's just start with an easy one. 10 times 0.75, right? Well, all I did when I was multiplying this by 10, right, I moved my decimal over to the right once. I'm going to do the exact same thing here. Move it over one time, okay, and it becomes 7 5/10. Well, what if I do 100 times 75 tenths? Well, I'm going to move my place value over, or my decimal, I keep saying place value. I'm going to move my decimal over twice, and it becomes 75. Okay, we're getting bigger, but we still have to get to 1,000 times 75 hundredths. And that is going to be, I'm so sorry for my horrible handwriting on here, guys. I'm going to try and figure out a way to make it so it's not quite so crazy all the time. All right, so I'm going to move my decimal over 1, 2, 3 times. Now, remember, there's a decimal here, and I have to have my placeholder, so I can't just leave it blank. I have to have a 0 there. And it's going to be 750 square inches. So if you are looking at this and it's kind of overwhelming you and you think, oh, I can't do 1,000 times a decimal, then use your pattern that you learned and work on it that way. All right? So my answer is going to be 750. All right, so last but not least, I'm going to have a few questions for you guys to answer. There's only one word problem, so that you guys should be happy about that. So what I want you guys to do is I want you to complete these in your math journal after you've completed your WISC, which is watch, summarize, and question. Make sure you write that question down and ask it in class tomorrow if you're having difficulty understanding any of the things we talked about in the video today. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Please make sure that you turn in the assignment on Edmodo and comment saying, Miss Cass, today I watched the video. Thanks. Have a good night.